new facilities can be designed around modular production cells, real-time analytics, and autonomous guided vehicles. By standardizing on Industry 4.0 frameworks from the outset, Ford can achieve faster changeover times between models, heightened quality control, and a smaller shop floor workforce. While this promises higher productivity overseas, it also means fewer entry-level manufacturing jobs overall, a factor that will reshape the labor market in the automotive sector globally and redefine the skill sets in demand for blue-collar roles. The corporate social responsibility (CSR) dimension cannot be ignored. Ford has long touted its commitments to sustainability, community investment, and American-made craftsmanship. Yet relocating plants to reduce tariff burdens may be perceived as inconsistent with those values. Stakeholders, from ESG investors to civic leaders, will scrutinize how the company balances profit imperatives with social license. Will Ford channel a portion of its cost savings into green manufacturing technologies or workforce retraining programs in affected U.S. regions? The optics of offshore relocation could compel the automaker to bolster its CSR narrative with quantifiable commitments to environmental performance and social outcomes, lest it face reputational backlash. Turning to the dynamics of the North American supply chain, Ford's move inevitably alters the calculus for inner-tier suppliers. Firms that historically clustered around U.S. assembly hubs, making transmissions in Indiana or stamping panels in Ohio, must now decide whether to follow the lead plant or double down on domestic specialization. Some may form joint ventures with local governments to build new facilities near Ford's Mexican operations, while others could seek to deepen relationships with other automakers still committed to U.S. production. The result could be a bifurcation of the tier supplier ecosystem, with distinct North American and global export corridors evolving in parallel. Another underexplored angle is the insurance and logistics risk profile that accompanies transnational manufacturing. Shipping finished vehicles from Eastern Europe to markets in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East exposes Ford to longer transit routes, piracy threats, and port congestion bottlenecks. Insurance premiums for ocean freight could climb, and any single congestion event, say at the Suez Canal, could ripple through supply schedules and dealer inventory. To mitigate these exposures, Ford will need to build redundancy into its logistics network. Multiple shipping lanes, diversified carrier contracts, perhaps even strategic stockpiles of critical models at regional distribution centers. Each layer of redundancy, however, carries a cost that chips away at the very savings the relocation sought to secure. Turning back to policy, the intransigence of retaliatory tariffs signals a new reality in which countries weaponize consumer markets as leverage in diplomatic disputes. By imposing duties on high-profile vehicles, trade partners sought to sway political constituencies in swing states. Ford's corresponding shift of jobs and investment now returns the leverage. Political actors in Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky find their re-election bids tied to the fate of automotive plants. In effect, global trade policy has morphed into a form of economic chess, with manufacturing footprints serving as rooks deployed to signal resolve. The question now is whether any future administration, Trump or otherwise, can rebuild trust in multilateral norms enough to coax firms back on shore. In the realm of environmental regulation, the move offshore may impose differing standards at each site. U.S. plants are subject to stringent EPA oversight, from volatile organic compound limits on paint booths to greenhouse gas reporting mandates. By contrast, regulatory regimes in Mexico, Eastern Europe, or Southeast Asia may be more permissive, translating into lower compliance costs but potentially higher environmental externalities. Ford must decide whether to hold all its facilities to a unified global standard, thereby incurring higher costs abroad, or accept a tiered approach that could draw scrutiny from environmental NGOs and carbon-conscious consumers. The ripple effects extend into the realm of research and development. Ford's historic Dearborn Tech Center, a sprawling campus of engines, transmissions, and vehicle systems experts, thrives on proximity to test lines and pilot plants. As assembly migrates overseas, the feedback loop between engineers and manufacturing teams weakens. To preserve design-to-volume fidelity, Ford may need to establish satellite test facilities closer to new plants, hire local engineering talent, and invest in digital twin simulations. Such investments are non-trivial and challenge the notion that savings from tariff avoidance will straightforwardly roll to the bottom line without creating parallel cost centers. From a geopolitical standpoint, Ford's pivot could be read as a nod to the ascendancy of Asia in the automotive domain. Although Eastern Europe provides a bridge to EU markets, Asia's growth trajectories in China, India, and Southeast Asia dwarf many Western economies. By aligning manufacturing closer to key nodes in Asia, Ford positions itself to tap booming demand, leverage lower labor rates, and cultivate partnerships with local technology firms. Yet this too carries risk. Dependency on Chinese suppliers of batteries and semiconductors, for example, may clash with U.S. government efforts to decouple from Beijing, introducing a fresh layer of strategic complexity. For labor unions, the International Association of Machinists and the United Auto Workers face a crisis of relevance. Membership counts have been in decline for decades, and the prospect of further job losses undercuts their bargaining power. Unions may pivot toward organizing in new plant locations, forging cross-border alliances to standardize wages and benefits. Such transnational unionism could reshape labor management relations, forcing automakers into multilateral collective bargaining frameworks that span multiple jurisdictions. A radical departure from the plant-centric model of the 20th century. Examining how comparable industries have navigated tariff-induced shifts offers instructive parallels. When Section 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum first hit, U.S. steelmakers paradoxically lost volume as downstream customers shuttered plants or neared closure. Shipbuilders and construction equipment manufacturers likewise reevaluated domestic versus overseas fabrication. In each case, firms responded by either automating heavily to preserve domestic capacity or outsourcing entire product lines. Ford's recent choice aligns more with the latter pattern, a wholesale relocation rather than partial automation, which signals how deeply trade costs can distort long-standing industrial equilibriums. In financial markets, the yield curve for Ford's corporate debt may come under fresh scrutiny. Investors will price in the risk of offshoring delays, regulatory approvals in new jurisdictions, and potential penalties for closing unionized plants. Credit default swap spreads could widen, reflecting heightened uncertainty. Conversely, improved profitability on export markets might strengthen Ford's credit metrics in the medium term, leading to a normalization of spreads. Bondholders, much like shareholders, will be attentive to the narrative as much as the numbers.